Right now, at the bottom of the ocean, there are entire cities. Not ruins. Actual cities with streets, buildings, houses, and temples. Some of them sank thousands of years ago during earthquakes. Others were deliberately flooded by governments who didn't care about preserving history. And the craziest part, we keep finding more. In the past 20 years alone, divers have discovered lost civilizations that historians thought were just myths. Places that prove ancient people were way more advanced than we give them credit for. Today, I'm going to show you what's really down there. Cities that disappeared overnight. Artifacts that make no sense. And discoveries that are so well documented, there's no way to deny they're real. Welcome to Stories Lost Forever. Heracleion, the city that drowned. In the year 2000, a French marine archaeologist named Frank Gaudio was looking for old shipwrecks off the coast of Egypt. His team was using sonar to scan the ocean floor near Alexandria, about 30 feet down. They were expecting to maybe find some broken pottery or an anchor. Instead, their sonar lit up with massive structures, stone blocks, statues, columns, lots of them. When the divers went down to check it out, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was an entire city. Streets laid out in grids. Massive temples. Giant statues of Egyptian pharaohs, some of them over 16 feet tall. Ships still loaded with cargo. And everything was covered in sand and sea life, like it had been down there for a very long time, which it had. Over 1,200 years. This was Heracleion, also called Thonis. Ancient Greek and Egyptian texts talked about this city all the time. It was supposedly one of the most important port cities in the ancient world, right at the mouth of the Nile River. This is where ships from Greece, Rome, and Persia came to trade. This is where Cleopatra was crowned queen. But after the 8th century AD, every mention of Heracleion just stops. The city vanished from history. Most historians assume the old texts were exaggerating, or that maybe the city never existed at all. Turns out it was real. And it didn't just fade away. It sank. Violently. Here's what happened. Heracleion was built on the Nile Delta, which sounds solid, but it's actually just layers of river sediment. Soft, muddy ground that's not great for supporting heavy stone buildings. Around 800 AD, a massive earthquake hit the region. The ground started shaking, and the soft sediment turned into liquid. It's called liquefaction. The buildings, the temples, the harbor, everything just collapsed and sank into the Mediterranean Sea within hours. The team has pulled up thousands of artifacts from the site. Gold coins, jewelry, religious statues. They even found a massive black granite slab covered in hieroglyphics, a decree from Pharaoh Nectanebo, the first from 380 BC. This stone solved the mystery historians had been arguing about for decades. Greek sources called the city Heracleion. Egyptian texts called it Thonis. People thought they were two different places. Nope. Same city, two names. But the most disturbing finds were the personal items. Things people were using when the earthquake hit. Kitchen tools still laid out like someone was cooking dinner. Jewelry still on skeletal remains. A woman's necklace clutched in a bone hand. These people had no warning. One moment they're going about their day. The next moment the ground opens up and swallows them whole. The site covers about 11 square kilometers. That's huge. And they've only excavated a fraction of it. There are probably decades of discoveries still down there. The Egyptian government and Gaudio's team are still working on it today, slowly bringing up artifacts and documenting everything. What makes Heraclean important is that it proves ancient historians weren't always making things up. For years, academics dismissed stories about lost cities as mythology. But Heraclean was exactly where the old text said it would be. So now the question is, what other lost cities are we dismissing as myth when they're actually sitting at the bottom of the ocean? The Lion City. In 1959, the Chinese government was building a hydroelectric dam in Zhejiang province. They needed to create a massive reservoir, which meant flooding a valley. The problem was there was a city in that valley. Shipwrecks, also called Lion City, founded over 1,300 years ago during the Han Dynasty. The government didn't care. They evacuated about 300,000 people, told them to pack up and leave, and then opened the dam. The city was underwater within weeks. For over 40 years, nobody talked about it. Out of sight, out of mind. The lake was called Qingdao Lake, which means Thousand Island Lake, because the tops of mountains became islands when the valley flooded. It became a tourist spot. People went fishing there. They had no idea there was an entire ancient city sitting at the bottom. Then in 2001, the Chinese government decided to see what was left down there. They sent divers down expecting to find collapsed buildings and rubble. What they found was shocking. The city was intact, not damaged, not destroyed, just sitting there, perfectly preserved like everyone had left yesterday. The cold, still water of the lake protected everything. What that should have rotted was still solid. Stone carvings from the Ming and Qing dynasties looked like they'd just been made. There were entire streets you could swim down, lined with houses and shops. Archways covered in detailed sculptures of dragons and lions. Temples with statues still standing inside. It was like swimming through a museum. Shipwrecks wasn't just some random village. It was a major cultural center. The city had over 265 archways, which were a big deal in Chinese architecture. They were built to honor important people or commemorate events. Some of these archways are massive, covered in carvings that took years to create, and they're all still down there. What makes this different from other underwater ruins is how good the preservation is. Most sunken cities get beaten up by ocean currents, eroded by salt water, or torn apart by storms. But Qingdao Lake is fresh water and deep enough that the surface waves don't disturb the city. So everything stayed frozen in time from 1959. Today, the Chinese government allows limited diving expeditions. You can actually visit the city if you're a certified diver and get permission. Photographers have taken incredible pictures down there, and when those images went online, people started calling it China's Atlantis. The photos look surreal. Divers swimming through ancient Chinese streets, beams of sunlight cutting through the water, fish swimming past stone dragons. But here's the thing that bothers people about Shipwrecks. It didn't have to be destroyed. This wasn't a natural disaster. The government chose to flood it. They could have moved the dam, changed the plans, or found another way. But they decided a power plant was more important than preserving 1,300 years of history. And now an entire city, one of the most important cultural sites in China, is at the bottom of a lake where most people can't even see it. Some Chinese historians argue that Shipwrecks should be protected as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Others say the government should drain the lake and restore the city. But that's never going to happen. The dam provides electricity and water to millions of people. So the city stays where it is, a hidden world that only a few people will ever get to see. Real quick, if you're enjoying these lost stories, do me a favor and hit that like button. It helps other people find these videos. And if you want more stories like this every week, subscribe to Stories Lost Forever. The Antikythera device. In 1900, a group of Greek sponge divers were working near an island called Antikythera, between mainland Greece and Crete. They were diving for sponges when one of them found a shipwreck about 150 feet down. The ship had been there for over 2,000 years, and it was full of stuff. Bronze statues, marble sculptures, pottery, gold jewelry. It was the kind of find that makes your career as a diver. The team brought everything up to the surface and handed it over to the Greek government. Most of the artifacts went straight to museums, but there was this one weird lump of corroded bronze that nobody paid much attention to. It sat in a museum storage room for years until someone finally decided to clean it and see what it was. When they opened it up, they found gears inside. Lots of them. At least 30 bronze gears, all connected, with Greek inscriptions explaining what they did. This wasn't just some random mechanical part. This was a device designed to calculate astronomical positions, the movement of the sun, moon, and planets, when solar and lunar eclipses would happen, even the timing of the ancient Olympic Games. To put this in perspective, nothing this complex shows up again in human history until the 1300s. That's over 1,300 years later. It's like finding a smartphone in a Roman ruin. It doesn't make sense. They call it the Antikythera mechanism. And the more people study it, the more insane it gets. You turn a crank on the side, and the gears inside rotate dials on the front and back. The front dial shows you where the sun and moon are in the sky. The back dials track the cycles of the moon and predict eclipses years in advance. The math required to build this is university-level astronomy. Modern researchers have used X-rays and 3D imaging to study the corroded remains. They've built working replicas to see how it functions. And every time they think they've figured it out, they find another layer of complexity. There are inscriptions on the gears that work like an instruction manual. Some of the text is so small it's hard to read even with a magnifying glass. So, who built it? Nobody knows for sure. Some people think it was made by followers of Archimedes, the Greek genius who invented all kinds of crazy machines. Archimedes lived in Syracuse, and he was famous for building weapons to defend his city from Roman invasions. If anyone could design something this advanced, it was him or someone he taught. The ship that was carrying the device was probably taking looted treasures from Greece to Rome. Rich Romans loved Greek art and would pay huge amounts of money for statues and artifacts. The ship got caught in a storm and sank, taking everything down with it. If that storm hadn't happened, the Antikythera mechanism probably would have ended up in some Roman villa and eventually been melted down for scrap metal like most ancient bronze. Here's what's disturbing about this. If this one device survived, how many others didn't? The Library of Alexandria, one of the biggest centers of knowledge in the ancient world, was destroyed. Thousands of texts, inventions, and discoveries were burned or lost. We know ancient people were smart, but the Antikythera mechanism proves they were way more advanced than we give them credit for. It forces you to wonder, what else could they do that we don't know about because the evidence didn't survive? The Battle of Actium. September 2nd, 31 BC. Off the coast of Greece, near a place called Actium, two massive fleets are about to fight for control of the Roman Empire. On one side, you've got Mark Antony and Cleopatra with over 230 warships. On the other side, Octavian, who would later become Emperor Augustus, with about 400 smaller, faster ships. Winner takes Rome. Loser dies. We've known about this battle for 2,000 years. It's in every history book. Octavian won. Antony and Cleopatra fled back to Egypt and eventually killed themselves. Octavian became the first Roman emperor. But for centuries, we only had the written accounts. No physical evidence. No proof the battle actually happened where historians said it did. Then in the early 2000s, underwater archaeologists started exploring the ocean floor near Actium using sonar. And they found it. The battlefield. Bronze rams from Roman warships. These things weigh over 400 pounds and were mounted on the front of ships to smash enemy hulls. They also found anchors, armor, weapons, and other debris spread across the seafloor exactly where the ancient historians said the fighting took place. One of the rams they pulled up is now in a museum. It's decorated with images of gods and Roman military symbols. These weren't just weapons. They were works of art. And finding them proved that the ancient accounts were accurate. The battle really did happen at Actium. Ships really did sink. Men really did die here. They also found lead sling bullets, which Roman soldiers used like ammunition. You'd load them into a sling and hurl them at enemy crews during battle. Some of the bullets had insults carved into them. One said victory. Another said take this. The Romans were literally trash-talking their enemies with their weapons. But the most haunting find was a skeleton still wearing a Roman breastplate. This soldier went down with his ship and stayed there for 2,000 years. When the team found him, they documented everything and then gave him a proper burial. But think about that for a second. A guy who died in 31 BC, still at his post, still wearing his armor, waiting at the bottom of the ocean for 2,000 years. The Battle of Actium wasn't just a military fight. It was a slaughter. Thousands of men drowned or were killed in the fighting. The ocean floor at Actium is basically a mass grave, and the artifacts we're pulling up, the rams, the weapons, the armor, they're not just historical objects. They're evidence of people who died violently. What makes this discovery important is that it confirms the historical record. For a long time, some historians questioned whether the ancient accounts were exaggerated. Maybe the battle wasn't as big as they said. Maybe the details were wrong. But the underwater evidence matches the texts almost perfectly. The types of ships, the weapons, the location, it all lines up. Which means the other things the Romans wrote about probably happened too. The structures of Zakynthos. In 2013, divers were exploring the waters off the coast of Zakynthos, a Greek island, when they found something that looked impossible. About 10 feet underwater, there were these perfectly geometric stone structures, columns arranged in rows, flat rectangular bases, right angles everywhere. It looked exactly like the ruins of an ancient city. News spread fast. Archaeologists got excited. Maybe this was another lost city like Heracleon. Maybe it was even older. People started speculating. Was this Atlantis? Was this proof of an advanced prehistoric civilization? The structures were too perfect to be natural. They had to be man-made. So a team of geologists and archaeologists went down to study them. They took samples. They ran tests. And when the results came back, everyone was shocked. These weren't ruins. They were natural, formed by a geological process that nobody expected. Here's what happened. Millions of years ago, methane gas started escaping from cracks in the seafloor. The gas mixed with minerals in the sediment and caused them to crystallize into rock. Over time, these rocks hardened and grew into shapes that look exactly like ancient architecture. Columns, bases, flat surfaces, even what looks like decorative carvings. All of it formed naturally. The scientific community couldn't believe it. How does nature create something this geometric? If you showed someone a photo of the Zakynthos structures without context, they would swear it was built by humans. But it wasn't. It was just chemistry and millions of years of time. This discovery is important because it raises a huge question. How many underwater ruins have we misidentified? How many things we think are ancient cities are actually just weird natural formations? And on the flip side, how many real man-made structures have we dismissed because we assumed they were natural? Some researchers now think the Yonaguni Monument off the coast of Japan might be natural too. That's another underwater site with terraces, steps, and right angles that some people think is an ancient city. Others say it's just erosion. The debate has been going on for decades, and Zakynthos just made it more complicated. What's unsettling about this is that we can't always trust what we see. The Zakynthos structures fooled experts. People who study this stuff for a living looked at it and said, yeah, that's definitely man-made. And they were wrong. So if we can be wrong about that, what else are we wrong about? Oh, the ocean covers 70% of the planet. We've explored less than 5% of it. That means there are entire worlds down there we've never seen. Lost cities, sunken ships, artifacts that could change everything we know about history. Every year, divers find something new. Ancient temples, submerged villages, shipwrecks loaded with treasure. And every discovery raises more questions than it answers. How advanced were ancient civilizations really? How much knowledge have we lost? And what else is down there waiting to be found? Heraclean proved that legendary cities are real. Lion City showed us that history can be erased by choice. The Antikythera device revealed that ancient people were way smarter than we thought. The Battle of Actium gave us a window into one of history's most important moments. And Zakynthos reminded us that not everything is what it seems. So what's next? What other secrets are hiding beneath the waves? Maybe one day we'll have the technology to map every inch of the ocean floor. Maybe we'll find more lost cities. Maybe we'll find things we can't even imagine. Or maybe some secrets are meant to stay hidden. This was the story of the lost cities beneath the waves. If you want more mysteries like this, subscribe to Stories Lost Forever and turn on notifications. Because these stories deserve to be remembered. And the ocean still has so many more to tell.